Yes. So this week is, as Ellie notes, Parshas Parah, right? Parshas Parah, where we read from what parsha?
No. Hold on.
Parshas
Chukas. That's right. After the maftir is from the beginning of Parshas Chukas. What? Look at you, Yuri. So we read Parshas Parah. Now, why do we read Parshas Parah at this time of the year?
It's coming up on Pesach.
What is coming up on Pesach?
You have to be tahor to bring meat.
Thank you. You have to be tahor to be.
Yeah.
Thank you. You have to be tahor. That is the key there.
Yikes.
Yes.
It sounded like a lot smarter in my head, and I kind of came out as like.
No, it's correct. That is the point. That you have to that we read beginning of Chukas, because when you bring the Korban Pesach, you need to be tahor, and since everyone had to bring Korban Pesach, everyone had to be tahor, and therefore.
Read the Paraduma.
We have to read about the Paraduma. That's right. Right. It's not actually that complicated. And yes, there is this possibility that this reading is d'oraisa based on like a, what? Probably not. But there is such a possibility, right? We have enough trouble establishing that Zachor is d'oraisa in the way that we think it is d'oraisa, like on a yearly basis with a minyan, right? Trying to get to that conclusion from the Rishonim is a strain enough, right? To then do that to para is like,
right.
Okay, fine. Fine. So we read about para. Now, para is necessary. Paraduma is necessary for what type of tumah? Tumas mace. Good. Let's just get basic facts down. Now, how does it work? What do? You
take the cow, you slaughter it, you burn it on the altar until it's ash, you mix the ash with water, and something involves ezod and red string.
Okay, not bad. And when do you sprinkle it on the person?
Outside the mikvah.
After he goes to the mikvah after the day.
On the 7th day.
On the 3rd and the 7th day. It's not like a drasha, right? This is hu yischata bo bayom hashlishi uvayom hashvi'i yitar.
Ben Yoma and Hazal.
Vim lo yitzchata bayom hashlishi uvayom hashvi'i lo yitar. This wasn't like I had to come up with a drasha, right? It gave you the hain and the lav, right? Day 3 and 7, then you're tahor. If you miss day 3 and day 7, or right, either day 3 or day 7, then you will be tamei. Good. Now, the right Chazal, right, pick paraduma as the paradigmatic what? Chok, the paradigmatic chok. Why do they pick it as the paradigmatic chok?
We don't.
That's backwards.
No, that's backwards. Right? That's backwards. Chazal say that it's the paradigmatic chok such that they attribute to Shlomo that even Shlomo didn't understand it. What was it about the paraduma that baffled Shlomo? Right, this is the only mitzvah in the whole Torah that the Torah doesn't give a reason for. Let's try that again, Ellie.
It's very hard to come up with a particular reason why Aduma, Para, why is that too much mitzvah?
Right, so here is really the divide, right? Is that some people understand that what bothers Chazal about it is the entire procedure, right? The entire procedure, which is a bit weird because, why is it any less fathomable than
process.
What?
Mitzorah.
Yeah, the Mitzorah process. Like this past week at the Parsha play, right? They were. The Mitzorah process, in many ways, is similar to also the sanctification of the Kohen process, right? And both of them, you put blood on random parts of your body. So the guy doing the play took a bottle of ketchup, squeezed it in his hand, and put it on the guy playing Aaron's ear and his finger and his foot, which is what you do with Mitzorah, right? Al boen yado ha'yimanis, al boen yado, right? So. Right.
Yeah.
So the other possibility is that it's not the entire process that is baffling. I mean, look, the whole thing is baffling. That's great, right? You have this, moment in the in several Tanaitic and Amoraic sources. Christine Hayes loves this, peace. I've heard her talk about it, more than once. I've only heard her speak several times. where where Chazal engage in a dialogue with with their heretical interlocutors, and they challenge Paraduma, and they're like, look, what's the problem? When you're sick, don't you go to some magic healer and they say some incantation to do something? And it's like, oh, Taka, it makes a lot of sense. Right? Meaning, right, yes, it does feel like that, but so, there's a lot of things like that in the world. But the other possibility is that what bothered Chazal, and they felt was particularly weird about it, wasn't just that, it's voodoo-y. Okay, fine, that's very nice. It's that the person who is involved in the process of the Tara becomes Tameh.
I don't even know why that's
right?
so weird. It's just it's an interesting din. It's just...
No, because it is really weird actually, because if you understand Tuma as a legal status that comes from doing certain actions, and therefore you get this doing bad things, and therefore you get this status.
Not bad things, but you give birth.
Yeah, you're okay. Impure.
Anyways, okay, so that's a bit just of facts on the Paraduma. Now, chok, to be fair, in Torah doesn't usually mean or necessarily mean a law that you don't understand, right? Right. That's not usually what it means.
I thought it was a law that you wouldn't intuit.
Right, so we could talk about chok. Do you want to talk about chok, or should I give you a little bit more perspective on Paraduma as it appears in Torah? Okay, so probably my favorite vert on Paraduma, right, which I think is very true, but it'll give you a bit of guiding in Bamidbar. Where does Paraduma appear in the Torah? Right, if I frame it, first of all, Parshas Chukas. It's in Chukas. I just said it's in Chukas, but where, like chronologically, where does it appear?
Right by Korach.
Right after Korach. Yay, good. That's very nice. So
that's pretty good.
So
wait, no. He's not good Korach. He's like right before and right around.
The answer. Okay. What I think is
that's pretty close. The serpent's story.
Okay. So what I think is the simplest shot. Guys, I think the simplest shot is why it appears where it does, and I think this gives a little bit of insight into what Paraduma is what happens at the end of Korach and picks up right after Paraduma.
The Jews dying from plague.
So good. The end of Korach, after Maisa Korach, so then there's a plague that ensues after that, and then you hear the last words that the Jews will ever speak in the first generation. And what are those words?
I'm sorry.
Vayomru b'nei Yisrael Moshe le'mor Hein gavanu avadnu kulanu avadnu. We have perished. We are lost. All of us are lost. That is the last words that we ever hear from the first generation. Period. Right? Because then you get the halachot. Kol karev el mishkan Hashem yamud. I am tamnu ligvoa. Sorry, the next pasuk is part of it. Kol karev el mishkan Adonai yamud. I am tamnu ligvoa. Anyone who comes near the Mishkan will die. Have we stopped dying? And the answer to that question is no. You never hear from them again. Done. They are absolutely done. We never hear from them ever. Right? Because right after that, Parak Yud Chet, so Moshe tells Aaron, to take care of the Beit HaMikdash, right, the Mishkan. Hashem gives a few commands to Aaron. He gives some commands to Levi. Then you get Chukat, which is the Paraduma. And what happens immediately after the Paraduma?
You die from plague, we need a copper serpent to...
Yes, but what year is it?
Same.
No, year 40. 38 years disappear. And what is the major halachic section in between the final words of the Jews who die in generation 1, which is, we're dying, or have we stopped dying? Silence. What's the major law that is put in between those 38 years, and then we wake up at the end of Paraduma, and magic, it's year 40. The law of how you purify yourself from death.
That's cool.
Right? So, what I think simply is, Paraduma, the reason it's put where it is, right, is because the Torah tells us nothing about those 38 years. There's dead silence. Again, it's chilling that the last word the Jews say before they die is, have we stopped dying? And the answer is, no, you absolutely have not stopped dying. We will hear nothing from you ever again. Not like until Chukat. No, you will be dead by that point, right? This is sometimes you miss this in Bamidbar, right? Bamidbar takes 38 and some off years, right? But really it takes like a few months at the beginning of that and a few months at the end and nothing in the middle, right? But the Torah, instead of telling you what happens there, gives you a mitzvah of para aduma, right? Which is how do you purify yourself from death, right? From tumat mate. But I think the reason is, right, because why is it that we have a process for Tara from the mate? Right? Again, we can get into the nitty-gritty, but I think bigadol, it's because death requires, right? Interaction with death requires a response. Right? And halacha, in general, right, provides the response to everything in life, especially those things that are big, the most human, and difficult to process. Right? Now, one of those is what we know, right? Shiva and all the Hilchot Avilut, much of which is rabbinic, some of which is biblical, right? Which is a way of processing. And one of it is that, the encounter with death is, in many ways, disturbing, right? Meaning, there is a psychological component in which people feel it's tameh, right? Right? And providing a way of purifying yourself is halacha giving you a way of digesting, right, the difficulty of coming into contact with death and giving you a way of moving past that. Right? Meaning what is true at a psychological plane is also true in a metaphysical plane, in a halachic plane. And halacha gives you tools to deal with it, which is part of its general goal, which is to help you process life from a godly perspective. Right? When you realize where para aduma appears in Bamidbar, and you realize that yes, the majority of the laws that are in between the death of generation 1 and the appearance of generation 2 is an extensive law of how do you deal with death, and more than that, how do you deal with death such that what?
You can come back from...
You can come back where?
To the basic.
Yeah, you can come back into contact with God. Right? Think about what it was metaphorically, right? Is that the Jews died because God said, you can't come into my land. Right? We have severed our relationship to the point where whether or not I forgive you, you can't come into my land. And generation 2 does get to come into contact with God, into his land. In the middle you get para aduma. Right? So metaphorically, right? Again, I don't think we can get into the exact details. Why Tumah? Why Tara? Why this process? Right? And that's part of what Chazal says is a chok. Right? But the fact that the laws of Tumah and Tara are there to help us process death, which is the hardest thing for humans to swallow and digest, because obviously it's where we come into contact with our own mortality, our own end, and therefore God says, okay, well, here's a way that you can process it, and until you have processed it, you can't interact with God, right? And think about what that means theologically, right? Until you have processed your contact with mortality, you can't come into contact with the immortal. Right? There is a certain intuitive logic to the fact that there has to be some set of laws that help you process. Right? What that law is going to be, that's a chok. But the fact that there must be a law, right, that helps you process mortality before you come into contact with God is intuitive. And when you realize where para aduma appears in Bamidbar, it's very clear that that is what it is doing, right? Which makes sense, right? And that's why when you go to the Beit HaMikdash, which is that physical instantiation of God's presence, you need to be tahor, right? You need to have divorced yourself from the visceral reaction with mortality to be ready to come into contact with the immortal. Okay? So that's just some thoughts.